Hola, my friend. I'm Melissa V. Cartwright, and welcome to the Passionate Performer podcast. You have a voice that deserves to be heard, and you also deserve to have a performance career where you don't feel like you're sacrificing who you are to meet the demands of the industry. So we are here to help you problem solve those challenges, figure out why we're feeling the way we do, and give you the next right step. You ready? Let's go. Happy New Year, dear listener. I swore that I was not going to start this podcast by saying, I know it's been a minute, but the truth is it really has, right? So yes, it's been a little while, and I'm just so excited. I'm excited to hit record on this episode, be back with you, give you a little bit of a life update, as well as some things that I hope that you can definitely take away today. So listen, I know that specifically here in the United States and in various other parts of the world, we've started a new year, and there is this collective rush, right, to create New Year's resolutions and set goals. This podcast is all about what to do next, helping us take the next right step when it comes to our singing and performance journeys. And part of the reason that you haven't seen me is because, number one, the fall took off in such a lovely way for some personal performance goals of mine. I was in a variety of different songwriting showcases, and I did my first straight play that I haven't done in over 20 years and was keeping up with holiday gigs. And again, such a lovely season, and I'm going to talk more about that. But also, too, I really needed to take a step back and evaluate what could I do well. Given the fact that I was afforded those opportunities, those performance opportunities, it started to feel like I was, spinning plates a little bit between making sure that I could still show up for those things that I was hired to do well, still serve my current clients inside of my teaching business within the Passionate Performer program. And so to show up here and hit record and be with you, I knew that you were not going to get the best of me. And I really needed to make sure that those things, creatively, professionally, personally, also got my attention. And there's been something so beautiful about the break, and also something so lovely about winter in particular. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, our winter is cold. Animals are hibernating. And for years, I always felt the pressure to go ahead and come 1st of January, hit the ground running to get after my goals. And I have felt such a resistance within my own body and within my own soul, I will say, mentally as well. There's been a huge resistance against that. I take a look at nature and everything else is slow. Things are sleeping, things are taking a break. And I think to myself, why do we as humans in particular feel this need to move quickly, to start moving from 0 to 90 come January 1st when everything else around us is still taking a pause? And I'm not going to get into like a big fancy history lesson. You can do this yourself. But, our calendar is pretty new when we think of society and history and ancient civilizations that actually started their year later on, like February, March, April, right? When nature itself is starting to wake up. And yet, come January 1st, we want to hit the ground running. And if you are someone in this season that is feeling a sense of fresh, exciting energy, please don't hear this as me throwing a bucket and trying to, squelch out your fire right now. I say follow that flow of inspiration. But if you're also someone right now that feels a sense of being rushed, even though you haven't done anything or said anything, but you can't understand why you're feeling an extra sense of anxiety around this time of year, this is probably why. And as performing artists, a lot of venues, theaters, organizers, maybe even your agent, if you have representation, is starting to request things of you. Hey, let's beef up your highlight reel, your demo reel. Let's get in the studio. Let's book these auditions. It's a heavy audition season for a lot of professional musical theater houses as well. So I understand that sense of hurry. But I also just want to take a pause and say that all that work you were doing in October, November, December didn't go anywhere. You're just simply building upon what you've already done. I don't want you to start thinking that you have to do something brand spanking new just because it is a new year. And so as you take a listen to this episode, I'm going to celebrate with you out loud some of the successes that I am still just pouring over with gratitude over from 2025. But when you look at someone's life and you look at their successes and you look at everything that, they have going for them, you take a look at their social media feed, which AKA is simply just a highlight reel. And you think, oh my gosh, I want what they have, or I want to do what they're doing. You're also going to have to consider everything it took for them to get to that point. What sacrifices were made? What failures happened? And that's what I want to be candid with you about in this episode. As you move forward with goal setting, with your dreaming, with your vision planning, all beautiful things to do, I want to be real with you and let you know you're going to have to take the whole package. The whole package, right? So before you start trying to craft what you think your artistic journey should look like based on what someone else has done, I want you to take a grand pause and examine what's it going to take? And you can draw some lessons from what I'm about to share with you inside this episode. Let's jump in. So last year was a huge year for crafting personal performances. One way I did this is I got out there and created my own cabaret. We had Gina Morgano on the podcast. I'll make sure I reference that episode in the show notes that you can go back and take a listen. She was a huge asset and resource to helping me craft this. And last year was the debut performance of Sugar and Sazon, my original cabaret. Original in the sense of crafting my own story. I produced it. I arranged the music. It was primarily covers. I did share some original music as well. I ended up becoming the music director, the booking agent, all the things for the show, in addition to being the lead singer for this show. So yes, it was a lot of work. I've talked about it before. We talked about it in that episode if you want to go check that out. And a goal of mine was not only to debut the show, but I wanted to also be able to encore it at least one more time, if not take it on a small mini tour. Now, thankfully, I was able to check off the encore box, and that's part of what I did in the fall, back in September. So I'm getting ahead of myself. I debuted Sugar and Sazon on March 14th of my birthday last year. I turned 45 last year, and it was a huge, significant moment to be able to do that on my birthday. It was also in conjunction with Women's History Month. And because this cabaret in particular celebrates the trajectory of Latina artists that were a heavy influence in my life, and the women in my life that also influenced me, the women in my family, my daughters, it was such a celebration of not just women's history, but just women in general. So it was just perfect timing to be able to culminate all those things, doing that on that date. I also basically had a female band. I had two lovely singers, shout out to Eileen Byrne and Maya Garcia, who joined me for this project and put this thing together. So I wanted what I thought would be the perfect encore was to do it again, this time do it in September, October, which would coincide with Hispanic Heritage Month. Thankfully, and shout out to Mallory Schmidt, who collaborated with me on this because I was able to showcase this inside a Hispanic Heritage Month festival that was done at the Little Theater of Norfolk here in Southeastern Virginia. I did the majority of the same music I did before, but I definitely had to adapt because with the cabaret being a part of an entire festival, I had to whittle it down to about 40 minutes or so of music. And I only had one of my ladies be able to do it with me. And so that I'll do a whole nother podcast on how to basically adapt a show that you have created and do it multiple times. Anyway, all that to say, it took a lot of work. It was received with such warmth and admiration here locally. Several future collaborations came from both of those times that I was able to do that. Not just, hey, let me book you as a singer, but also creative collaborations as well. I was able to work with a husband and wife team, McNeil Video and Photography. They did my actors' headshots. I hired them to be able to do this project. And from there, share the love with their incredible work, with the venues that I got to work with and professional relationships that have blossomed from doing that. But I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty. After I debuted that show in March, for all of the beautiful things that came out of that, not just to be able to check that off of my list, but hearing the stories and inspiration that came from that, even people who weren't native Spanish speakers who were inspired to go pursue something that they kind of left dormant. That was the heart of the show, that you need to celebrate who you are, not make apologies for who you are, and go after what it is you love to do with all of your heart and soul. Now, my friend, when it came to booking it the first time and then trying to find other locations to book it, that was probably one of the biggest heartaches and hurdles. Because I did not have someone helping me as a booking agent to communicate with these venues and communicate with these locations, so much of my mental energy got zapped from the fun part, right? Which is the actual music making and storytelling. And I got to a point where I was like, oh my goodness, all of my mental energy has been placed in the last 3 hours of trying to contact venues, getting rejections from different venues. I think in total, between the premiere of the cabaret and the encore, I reached out to a total of 12 venues. 4 of those actually responded. 2 of those were obviously a yes. The other 2 were like, I'm not sure if we can do this right now, but if you're interested in booking in the future, here's our rates. So I was so appreciative that even if it was a no or a not now, that there was a response. There was zero response from anyone else. And so, in business, you're not owed a yes, but you're at least owed a response. So that showed me a lot of, wow, this sucks, right? The communication process with a lot of this, especially in the artistic world, it's sucky. There's no other way to get around it, And then it was also fodder and inspiration that I need to make sure that I'm conducting myself, even if somebody approaches me, even if it's a no, that I respond as well. I respond with a no. Now, there's like spammy type of information out there. Maybe they thought mine was such, even though, I put my best digital face forward, with a 1-page information, a write-up, a press release, all the things on what this actually was, and still got zero response. Even when these venues on their website had information for like, interested in booking with us? And I followed all the instructions and still didn't receive anything. So there was the emotional, mental toll of having to export all of that energy into the logistics, into the financial logistics of budgeting for this and ticket sales, in addition to the creative input that was required of me to put this together, right? To actually do the fun part of showcasing this show. So with that, like once March came and, we did the show and I knew that I wanted to debut it again, I still had to make sure that I could step away. In fact, this leads me to my next failing forward moment, because with all the excitement of the show, I thought, oh man, there's some other things on the horizon that are lined up. Conversations I was having even before the cabaret with a potential booking agent that I was hoping to work closely alongside with, who had these things lined up for the spring, because now we're getting into spring and summer festivals, huge music scene. One would think, hey, awesome, I've gotten eyeballs on this show. People are starting to get to know me in the community with the kind of music or the kind of artist that I am. Nothing. In fact, one of the regular restaurant gigs that I had for almost 3 years stopped contacting me. And I had so many ideas. They were even one of the people that, a bit initially in talking said, yeah, we'd love to be able to like host your cabaret. When it was time to circle back around, crickets. And I thought to myself, what is going on? And I realized that there were, again, hindsight is 2020. I had no idea what was about to come in the fall. But here's what was also happening at that time. It was easy to get discouraged and be like, a year ago, I was all booked up for the summer. I was all booked up for the spring with various musical gigs. And nothing was happening. And here's what was happening simultaneously. My health and wellness was going down the drain. I make no bones about how old I am. I am going to be turning a fabulous 46 this year. And so I am in the gloriousness of my perimenopause. Oh my goodness, my body's like, here we go, honey. There are some things, there's some symptoms that are going to pop up, and I am going to make you pay attention to me. And I, for a long time, let symptoms like GI issues in particular go by the wayside. And it was finally time to start taking some action, just like we talk about on this podcast. Looking back, had I booked all of those potential gigs that I had penciled in on my calendar for that time of year, I think I would have had to deal with some physical health symptoms that would have gotten worse because I was under the impression that I could just continue riding the high of, yay, let's keep booking gigs. And these were professional paid opportunities. And so I look back on late spring and summer, and I was able to start working with a nutritionist. I made some doctor's appointments, changed a couple of doctors even, so that I could get the treatment and the answers that I needed for my body at the time. I'm happy to report that I've made some lifestyle changes that have helped not just manage symptoms, but really help move me towards a level of awareness in my body. And we know that as singers, I talk about this a lot here, we have a living instrument. We do not have an instrument that we put in a case, close the door, and walk away. We have an instrument that is influenced by our thoughts, by what is going on with the functionality of our anatomy, and those things affect the way that we sound. And had I continued just trying to push through a busy season of gigging for the prestige of saying that I was booked and blessed, my body and my voice would have suffered. So spring and summer were very slow. It also gave me a chance to take a look at all of the, revenue incomes that I have, both as a teacher and as an artist, and get creative with scaling back a bit and making room for purposeful, mindful rest. And rest for me as an anxious bunny isn't just about sitting and reading a book or going on a vacation. Rest for me can also be something that's manual with my hands. I work so much using my brain, right? And creating ideas as a business owner, as a coach, as a musician, that can I take a rest? Can I Sabbath with my hands? That's actually a quote from Anne Lamott, I believe. I'm going to double check that for you guys and put that in the show notes. But it's a quote that said, if you work with your brain, Sabbath with your hands. If you work with your hands, Sabbath with your brain. And so had I continued going at 90 miles an hour, I wouldn't have been able to make that discovery for myself. So I am so grateful for those gigs that fell through, even for the ghosting that happened when I tried to reach out, because it gave me space to be able to make those adjustments. And here's the third thing that happened. Towards the end of the spring, one of my last gigs before a summer break, or a summer of silence, I should say, purposeful silence, I got booked to do a house party. When people book me for live music for something like that, we work closely with the set list, because if you're booking me to come into your home for a private event, a private party, chances are you're going to want me to sing certain songs, right, that your guests are going to enjoy. So the majority of them were covers. And he actually said, we do want to hear some of your original music as well. Thankfully, he wasn't micromanaging my set list or anything, but I did maybe 2 or 3 originals, and then I did 2 hours worth of covers. And he was like, oh, okay, great. Thanks for coming. Seemed to enjoy. I was like, is everything okay? He's like, you're fantastic. But next time, I think we want to hear more of your original music. And it wasn't like 3.5 out of 5 stars. It wasn't like that. I received it as, wow, that's the first time that somebody was that poignant and that direct with me about wanting to hear more of what I have to say through music. Shortly thereafter, I kid you not, for like 2 weeks, between friends commenting on social media and friends having coffee with me, without being prompted, when are we going to hear more of your original music? Do you have original music to share? For almost 2 weeks straight after that initial house party. And I thought, okay, This is something that has been dormant. I shared some of my original music in my cabaret and in the restaurant gigs that I'd been doing for the last 3 years, but I really never made time for that. And so I gave myself permission to dream a little, okay? Summer, again, was a chance to work on my own health and wellness, and it was also a chance to revisit my songwriting. And it could have been so easy for me to take that comment of that event organizer and take it as something negative, like, oh no, they did not enjoy my performances. He's a dissatisfied client, right? But no, it was an invitation to get back to the heart of why am I singing, right? We talk about that too. Why am I singing? What am I trying to say as a musician, as a passionate performer in this season of my life? Once I got clarity and sat down and even revisited some of our own materials inside of our Passionate Performer program and inside of my Slay the Stage course, where we talk about artistic branding, I went back and revisited those tools and got clear on what it is and who I am in this season of my life as a singer. Not long after that, I was invited to 2 songwriting showcases. One that I had applied for back in January of 2025 that I did not hear anything about until the beginning of August. And they're like, hey, are you still available? I was like, sure. Got to showcase 2 of my original songs with 6 other artists that were chosen. Shortly thereafter, I was invited by a local musician who was doing an all-female showcase. Now I had to do 30 to 40 minutes of my own original music. So I was dusting off songs that I'd written years ago. That was good too, because I realized who I was in that moment when I wrote that song and who I am now, and how certain things just don't align. And that's okay. That's the beauty of music as it evolves and how you evolve as a human. But had I taken that comment from that event organizer at the end of May and gotten my feelings hurt and took it personally, and been like, I don't know if I should be doing this anymore. My gosh, I would have given up on a treasure and on a personal project that I'm now in the midst of. 2026, I'm hoping that I can actually release some of my own music, that I can send it to you or send you to it on different streaming platforms. And I was given 2 opportunities to showcase that here in the community that I live, not just as a cool Latina chick who does covers, but really she's a singer-songwriter. And from that, also, I've been given an opportunity that I can't wait to share more with you about that's coming in March, where I was hired on as a songwriter for a huge event for a local nonprofit. Rejection in this business, in this calling that we've said yes to as passionate performing artists, can be so detrimental. I get that. I work with artists every day who are working through putting the pieces back together with listening to the no's, allowing somebody else's perception of you to shape the kind of singer you are, and having to rediscover what it is, like almost fall back in love with singing and performing again. So I get that. But we also know that it also comes with a package. And I don't say that to be like, that's show business, to try to wash away or gloss over some of the incredibly hard things that happen in our industry, and even some of the abuses that happen in our industry that are not right. But I want to leave you with this as we move forward into this new year. Our capacity to withhold hardship or difficulty or even rejection is something that we need to work on, okay? And what's going to help us do that is being able to know who we are as people, know who we are as performing artists, know how we want to show up in different spaces, know that getting the gig is not the job, the audition is the job. That's what you're going to spend a lot of your time doing. So that's one facet of that, because there's other things that we're doing regularly that really are the job. When we sit down and write a song, that's part of the job. When we sit down and rehearse, when we set aside time to practice with the band, to get inside the studio, to collaborate, that's all part of the job. Booking the shows and booking the roles and being able to lay down the tracks, those are all surpluses. Those are blessings and benefits that come from doing the job, that come from doing the work when we show up for ourselves, on a daily, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. Next time you're tempted to look at me or look at anyone else that you deem as successful, remember that there are things that you will never know that took place in order for them to get to where they are. All right, dear singer. So I want to encourage you to move with purpose in these next few days. Rest with purpose, journal with purpose, sing with purpose. And I'm not talking about having to go deep. Maybe the only intention is to be playful about it. Go back and revisit some of those songs that you loved singing as a kid. Go back and watch previous performances. I actually did this the other day. Part of my goal setting is to update some of my video reels, highlight reels, things like that I have on my performance website. I was going back and revisiting some older YouTube songs and covers that I'd done, and some of my originals as well. I haven't watched them for years. And it's so easy to go ahead and go into that space going, what's this going to sound like? Because it was forever ago. And I sat there and I was like, girl, look at you. That was really, really excellent. I remember what it felt like when you hit record and sang that. And I'm going back and watching this. I'm like, well, dang. Yeah, I did like that. I did enjoy that, And so I want you to get into a headspace where you can go back and not always be in critique mode. Not always be in how can I make this better mode, but simply just to enjoy something for what it was. And then if part of your creativity, part of your inspiration is to take that, play with it a little bit more. Yeah, change some things around that seem to align with you better in this season of your life. Have at it. Have at it. Learn how to receive constructive criticism well, and that it's not an attack on who you are as a person. It's not an attack on your character. Let's learn how to be moldable and pliable in 2026. If we have any goals or resolutions this year, my hope for you is how to move forward with ease and how to be pliable, especially when it's time to crank it up and go all out. We have those bursts of energy, those bursts of adrenaline, or it's time to do the damn thing. And we're in it. I pray and hope that you can be in it, even in that moment of excitement and highs and 8 shows a week, whatever it can be, that you're still moving through that with a sense of groundedness and purpose and awareness and being fully present in the moment. Yeah. So, hey, let's learn how to fail forward, how to take quote unquote failures as data, as information, as life showing us how to pivot, where to move towards next. And if any of this landed for you, dear singer, let me know. Put it in the comments, leave a review, reach out to me on social media. I want to cheer you on in your goals this year as you move forward and take that next right step as a passionate performer.